I am Apothecary Thendrius Kale, servant of the Crimson Wardens chapter, and I have carved the Emperor's legacy from the throats of the dead for 143 years. This is not metaphor. This is not hyperbole. This is the literal, sacred, blood-soaked truth of my calling. You may know the Adeptus Astartes as the Emperor's Angels of Death, superhuman warriors clad in ceramite and fury, paragons of the Imperium's might. You may know the gene seed as the holy biological template from which we are made, the immortal genetic key that transforms mortal boys into demigods of war. You may even know that we harvest this gene seed from the fallen, that it is precious beyond measure, rarer than archaeotech, more sacred than relics of the saints. But you do not know what it costs. You do not know the weight of the reductor drill in your hand as you kneel in a crater of ash and shattered bone, the stench of promethium and ruptured organs thick in your rebreather, the corpse of your battle brother still warm beneath your gauntlets. You do not know the sound the progenoid gland makes when you cut it free, a wet, fibrous tearing, like roots pulled from blood-soaked soil. You do not know the prayer you whisper as you seal it in stasis, the desperate, hollow hope that this death will birth another warrior, that the chapter will endure one generation more. You do not know the weight of failure. I do. The Crimson Wardens are dying. Not swiftly, not gloriously in a single apocalyptic battle, but slowly, gene seed by gene seed, century by century. We are a chapter of less than 400 battle brothers now, when once we numbered nearly 1,000. Our recruiting worlds have been rendered barren by Xenos raids and heretic uprisings. Our gene stock grows thin, corrupted by time and the entropy that gnaws at all things in this rotting galaxy. Every gene seed we harvest is a desperate gamble. Every implantation risks catastrophic rejection, mutation, madness. And I am the one who must make those calculations. I am the one who must look a scout sergeant in the eye and tell him that the boy he brought me, the boy he found in the ruins of a hive city, the boy who survived orc raiders and starvation and the Imperium's neglect, cannot receive the gene seed because the progenoid stock is too degraded, too uncertain, and we cannot afford the loss. I am the one who must stand over the operating slab and watch a neophyte's body reject the implants, watch his organs liquefy, watch him scream until his vocal cords rupture, and know that the gene seed I gave him was flawed, that I killed him, that his death bought us nothing. I am the one who must descend into the battlefield's aftermath and perform the harvest. The Codex Astartes is clear on the matter of gene seed recovery. It is the apothecary's highest duty, superseding even the treatment of the wounded. A battle brother may be saved by another's hand, but only the apothecary can recover the progenoid glands, the twin biological organs that contain the chapter's genetic future. The first, the cervical progenoid, nestles at the base of the neck, maturing within 5 years of implantation. The second, the thoracic progenoid, sits deep within the chest cavity, requiring 10 years to reach full viability. Each gland, when harvested and cultured, can produce multiple gene seed implants. Each fallen brother, if recovered in time, can sire a generation of warriors yet unborn. But the Codex does not tell you what it feels like. It does not tell you that the dead do not rest easy, that the moment after death, the body begins its collapse. Gene seed degrading, organs rupturing, the sacred biological architecture of the Astartes breaking down into corrupted meat. It does not tell you that you must work in haste, cutting through power armor with plasma torches, prying open fused ceramite plates with your hands, tearing through subdermal mesh and reinforced bone to reach the glands before they spoil. It does not tell you that sometimes the bodies are not whole, that sometimes you find only a torso, the legs vaporized by a lost cannon blast, that sometimes the head is missing, the cervical progenoid lost in the crater where the brother's skull exploded, that sometimes you must dig through rubble with your bare hands, sifting through ash and shrapnel, searching for fragments of power armor, hoping that somewhere in the carnage the gene seed survived. It does not tell you that failure is common. The Crimson Wardens lost 37 battle brothers in the defense of Vorskar Prime. I recovered gene seed from 18. 19 brothers died for nothing. 19 sets of progenoid glands were destroyed, burnt to ash by plasma fire, liquefied by viral munitions, crushed beyond recovery beneath the treads of a traitor battle tank. 19 genetic legacies, irreplaceable and ancient, erased from existence. 19 future warriors who will never be born. I knelt in the ruins of that battlefield for 6 hours after the fighting ended, my armor caked in mud and blood, my hands shaking as I opened the last stasis vault and counted the gene seed within. 37 dead. 18 recovered. The chapter master did not censure me. He simply nodded, his face carved from granite and sorrow, and told me to prepare the gene seed for implantation. There were 12 neophytes awaiting the transformation. 12 boys who had survived the trials, who had proven themselves worthy. We had 18 glands. We should have been celebrating. We had more than enough. But I knew the truth. I had examined every progenoid under the auger lens. I had analyzed the genetic sequences, cross-referenced them against the chapter's diminishing archives. Of the 18 glands we recovered, only 9 were pure. The rest showed signs of degradation, minor mutations in the catalepsia node, irregularities in the osmodula coding, trace corruption in the preomner sequences. 9 pure glands, 12 neophytes. I made my recommendations. The chapter master accepted them without question, as he always does. He trusts me. He trusts my expertise, my dedication, my cold surgical assessment of what the chapter can and cannot afford. 3 boys were turned away. They did not weep. They did not beg. They simply saluted, turned, and walked back into the fortress monastery's dim corridors, where they would serve as chapter serfs. Mortal men in a legion of gods, forever diminished, forever marked by their failure. Except it was not their failure. It was mine. The harvest begins the moment the enemy is broken. While the tactical squads secure the perimeter and the techmarines assess salvage, I move through the killing fields with my servoskull attendants and my reductor drill. The battlefield is never silent. Fires crackle in the wreckage of tanks. Servitors drone their monotone prayers as they drag corpses into processing piles. Somewhere in the distance, a wounded orc still howls, its vocal cords too primitive to understand that it is already dead. I do not hear these things. I hear only the biomonitor's ping as it locks onto Astartes' physiology, the faint electromagnetic signature of a progenoid gland still viable within a corpse's ruined chest. Target acquired. I kneel. Brother Sergeant Haldren, 3rd Company, 1st Squad. His power armor is cracked open like an eggshell, the chest plate peeled back by a power claw's savage grip. His primary heart is missing, ripped out and likely devoured by the Xenos filth that killed him. His secondary heart still beats, faintly, a doomed rhythm that will cease within minutes. The progenoid glands do not care. They are independent biological systems, engineered to survive even total host death for a precious few hours. I activate the reductor. The drill screams to life, ceramite tipped and consecrated with unguents of preservation. I drive it into the base of Haldren's neck, angling precisely through the shattered vertebrae, bypassing the fused bone lattice and subdermal armor. The cervical progenoid sits nestled against the spine, a bulbous organ the size of a clenched fist, veined with black capillaries and pulsing faintly with autonomic life. I cut it free. The extraction takes 40 seconds. The flesh resists even in death. Astartes' biology is engineered to endure, to cling to function long past the point of mortal expiration. I sever the connecting tissues with a monomolecular scalpel, peel away the protective membrane, and lift the gland clear. It is warm. It is slick with blood and cerebrospinal fluid. It is the future of the chapter, held in my trembling hands. I place it in the stasis vault. The preservation field activates, bathing the organ in cryogenic suspension and anti-corruption heuristics. The vault seals with a pressurized hiss. 1. I move to the thoracic extraction. Haldren's chest cavity is a ruin. Ribs shattered, lungs punctured, the 3rd lung entirely absent. But the thoracic progenoid is deeper, nestled beneath the fused rib lattice in a cavity of reinforced cartilage. I cut through the bone with the plasma torch, peel back the sternum, and reach inside. The gland is there, intact, mature. I pull it free and seal it in a second vault. 2. I stand. I move to the next corpse. Brother Kylo's, Assault Squad Tertius. His jump pack exploded mid-flight, immolating him in a column of promethium fire. His body is charred, the flesh blackened and cracked, the smell of roasted meat overwhelming even through my rebreather. I scan for the biosignature. Negative. Both progenoids destroyed. I mark his remains for cremation and move on. This is the calculus of the harvest. Not every death yields gene seed. Not every fallen brother can be recovered. The Imperium is vast, and its wars are endless, and the Astartes die in places where no apothecary can reach them. They die in the void, their bodies sucked into space and frozen in the dark. They die in orbital bombardments, vaporized in nuclear fire. They die in warp storms, their gene seed corrupted by the touch of chaos and rendered worse than useless. Actively dangerous, a genetic poison that could infect an entire generation. The Crimson Wardens are not a wealthy chapter. We do not have the resources of the Ultramarines, who can afford to waste gene seed on risky implantations and experimental procedures. We do not have the recruitment base of the Space Wolves, who draw from a single feral world teeming with viable candidates. We do not have the ancient genetic purity of the Blood Angels, whose gene seed remains stable even after 10,000 years of war. We have only what we can take from the dead, and the dead are failing us. I reach the next body. Brother Talon, Devastator Squad Secundus. His heavy bolter is still clutched in his hands, the barrel warped and melted from sustained fire. His helmet is cracked, his face visible, pale, expressionless, eyes open and staring at nothing. A lost bolt punched through his gorget and severed his spinal column. Death was instant. The biomonitor pings. Positive signature. Both progenoids intact. I kneel. I begin the extraction. The cervical progenoid comes free cleanly, the tissue yielding to the reductor's holy work. I seal it in stasis and move to the thoracic cavity. The chest plate is intact, still locked. I activate the emergency release code, the ancient tech ritual that all apothecaries learn in their training. The armor opens, the ceramite plates sliding apart with a pneumatic hiss. The thoracic progenoid is there. But something is wrong. The gland is discolored. The veins are not black but a sickly green, streaked with corruption. The surface is pitted, blistered, as if exposed to acid. I scan it with the auger lens, cross-referencing the genetic markers against the chapter's archives. Contamination detected. Genetic degradation at 47%. Corruption index. Severe. Cause. Unknown. I stare at the gland. I have seen this before. Not often, but often enough. The gene seed is dying. Not from battle damage. Not from environmental exposure. But from within, from the slow, inexorable entropy that gnaws at all things in this galaxy. The Crimson Warden's gene stock is ancient, descended from the lost days of the Great Crusade, and it has been recycled and reimplanted for 10,000 years. Every generation, the genetic code degrades a fraction more. Every harvest, a few more glands show signs of mutation. Every implantation, the risk of rejection grows. The chapter is dying from the inside. I remove the corrupted gland and place it in a separate vault, marked with crimson sigils of quarantine. It will be taken to the apothecarian, examined, catalogued. Perhaps the genitor adepts can salvage something from it, a fragment of usable tissue, a genetic sequence that can be repaired. Perhaps it will simply be incinerated. Another loss added to the chapter's mounting toll. 3 recovered. 1 corrupted. I move on. The harvest continues for hours. I work in silence, alone save for my servoskulls and the distant hum of the battlefield's cleanup. The sun sets. The sky turns the color of blood and ash. My armor's autosenses adjust, bathing the corpses in pale green light. I find Brother Vask, his body crushed beneath a collapsed bunker. Negative signature. Both progenoids destroyed. I find Brother Orel, his throat torn out by a chain axe. Positive signature. Cervical progenoid intact. Thoracic progenoid ruptured and leaking. I find Brother Corvin, his body missing from the waist down. Positive signature. Both progenoids intact, but the cervical gland shows early signs of the same green corruption I saw in Talon. One by one I harvest the dead. One by one, I seal their legacy in stasis vaults. One by one, I tally the chapter's dwindling future. By the time I finish, the battlefield is dark. The fires have burned down to embers. The enemy corpses have been piled and set ablaze, a funeral pyre that lights the night like a second sun. I stand in the center of the killing field, surrounded by the empty shells of my brother's armor, and I open my Vox channel to the fortress monastery. This is Apothecary Kale. Harvest complete. 37 casualties. 18 gene seed recovered. For showing signs of genetic corruption. Requesting immediate transport and genitor-adept consultation. The response is immediate. Acknowledged, Apothecary. Thunderhawk en route. ETA 12 minutes. I close the channel. I look down at the stasis vaults maglocked to my armor, each one containing a piece of the chapter's future. 18 glands. 37 dead. The math is simple. The math is brutal. We are dying. The Apothecarian is a cathedral of flesh and steel. It occupies the eastern wing of our fortress monastery, a vast labyrinth of surgical theaters, gene forges, and stasis crypts carved into the living rock of our chapter's home world. The walls are white marble, veined with black obsidian, lit by the cold radiance of lumen strips and flickering candlelight. The air is thick with incense, sacred unguents of preservation, chemical sterilizers, and the faint metallic tang of blood. Servoskulls drift through the corridors, their hollow eye sockets glowing with auspex light, their mechanical voices murmuring the litany of purity in endless repetition. This is where gene seed is prepared. This is where neophytes are transformed. This is where the future of the Crimson Wardens is forged, one screaming boy at a time. And this is where we confront the truth of our decline. I descend into the gene vault, the stasis vaults from Vorskar Prime clutched in my hands. The vault is a circular chamber, 50 meters across, its walls lined with cryogenic alcoves, each one containing a progenoid gland in frozen suspension. The chapter's genetic reserves, our insurance against disaster, our hope for survival. There are 347 glands in the vault. There should be thousands. The Codex Astartes recommends a reserve equal to twice the chapter's full-strength complement, 2,000 glands for 1,000 warriors. This allows for catastrophic losses, failed implantations, genetic testing, and the slow, patient cultivation of new gene stock. A healthy chapter can afford to be cautious. A healthy chapter can afford to wait for perfect candidates, to reject flawed aspirants, to maintain the purity of their line. We cannot. 347 glands. 412 battle brothers. If we lost the chapter tomorrow, if a warp storm swallowed our fleet, if a Tyranid hive fleet consumed our home world, if the Inquisition declared us excommunicate and hunted us to extinction, we would have enough gene seed to rebuild. Once. If nothing went wrong. If every implantation succeeded. If every progenoid we recovered was pure. I place the 18 new vaults into the reception cradle and activate the analysis protocols. The genitor adepts will examine each gland, sequence its genetic code, compare it against the chapter's historical template. They will identify mutations, corruption, degradation. They will grade each gland on a scale from alpha pure to epsilon compromised. And I will wait. I always wait. The analysis takes 6 hours. I spend that time in the surgical theater, preparing for the next round of implantations. 12 neophytes are waiting, 12 boys who survived the trials, who proved themselves worthy. They are sedated now, strapped to operating slabs, their bodies shaved and sterilized, their flesh marked with incision guides. They do not know that 3 of them will be turned away. They do not know that I have already decided which ones will receive the gene seed and which will be consigned to a lifetime of servitude. The selection process is cold. It is mechanical. It is the only way to survive. I review their files, displayed on hololithic screens above each slab. Name, age, genetic compatibility index, trial performance, psychological assessment. Every metric is analyzed, every variable weighed. I am looking for perfection, but I will settle for viability. Neophyte Tarn, age 13, compatibility index, 89%. Trial performance, excellent. Psychological assessment, stable with moderate aggression and high loyalty markers. Gene seed allocation. Alpha grade cervical, beta grade thoracic. Approved. Neophyte dross. Age 14. Compatibility index, 76%. Trial performance, adequate. Psychological assessment, unstable, with high aggression and low empathy markers. Gene seed allocation, beta grade cervical, gamma grade thoracic. Marginal, flagged for secondary review. Neophyte Kaler, age 12. Compatibility index, 91%. Trial performance, exemplary. Psychological assessment, stable with high intelligence and discipline markers. Gene seed allocation, alpha grade cervical, alpha grade thoracic. Approved. I move through the list, making notes, marking candidates. The process is exhausting. Every decision is a gamble. Every approval is a risk. If I choose wrong, if I implant corrupted gene seed into a promising candidate, if I waste a pure gland on a boy who rejects it, I am not just failing the neophyte. I am failing the chapter. I am murdering our future. The pressure is constant. The doubt is overwhelming. But I do not stop. The gene seed analysis completes. The data feed scrolls across my retinal display. 18 progenoids analyzed. 9 rated alpha pure. Suitable for immediate implantation. No genetic abnormalities detected. 5 rated beta stable. Minor mutations present. Suitable for implantation with moderate rejection risk. For rated gamma compromised. Severe genetic degradation. Implantation not recommended. Quarantine and further study required. 9 pure glands. 12 neophytes. I exhale slowly, the sound rasping through my rebreather. The math is unchanged. I knew it would be. I have been doing this long enough to predict the outcomes, to feel the weight of entropy pressing down on every harvest. I review the neophyte list again, cross-referencing compatibility indices with gene seed grades. The optimal pairings are clear. Tarn receives an alpha grade set. Kaler receives an alpha grade set. 7 others receive combinations of alpha and beta grades. 3 neophytes are eliminated. Dross, the unstable boy with marginal compatibility. Jensk, a 14-year-old with adequate performance but low genetic markers. Vor, a 13-year-old with a history of minor mutations in his baseline human genome. Nothing disqualifying, but enough to tip the balance when gene seed is scarce. I send the final approval list to the chapter master. The response is immediate. Approved. Proceed with implantations. The Emperor protects. The Emperor protects. The words are hollow. The Emperor has not protected us. He has not sent us reinforcements, or new recruiting worlds, or a miracle cure for our dying gene line. He sits on his golden throne, a corpse god preserved by suffering and sacrifice, and he offers nothing but silence. But I do not say this, cannot say this. To doubt the Emperor is heresy. To question his will is damnation. So I bow my head, murmur the appropriate prayer, and begin the work. The implantation of gene seed is not a single procedure. It is a decades-long process, a brutal transformation that rewrites a human body at the cellular level. 19 specialized organs, the gifts of the Emperor, the legacy of the Primarchs, are implanted in stages, each one triggering cascading biological changes. The secondary heart, the osmodula, which fuses and strengthens the skeleton. The biscopia, which enhances muscle growth. The hemastamen, which alters blood chemistry. The Laramens organ, which enables rapid clotting. The catalepsian node, which allows a space marine to function without sleep. The preomner, which grants resistance to poison. The hemophagia, which allows gene memory absorption through consumption of flesh. And the progenoid glands, the foundation of it all, the genetic seed from which every other organ is derived. The progenoids are implanted first in the early stages of transformation. The cervical gland at age 10 to 12, nestled at the base of the skull. The thoracic gland at age 12 to 14, embedded deep in the chest. Once implanted, they begin to mature, slowly accumulating the genetic information needed to produce the other organs. The process takes years. The mortality rate is staggering. Of every 100 boys who begin the transformation, Fewer than half survive to become full battle brothers. The rest die screaming. Neophyte Tarn is the first. He is 13 years old, pale-skinned and gaunt, his body scarred from the trials. He survived a month alone in the death-world jungles of our home world, hunted by predators and rival aspirants. He survived psycho-indoctrination, the brutal mental conditioning that sears loyalty into the mind. He survived the genetic compatibility tests, the pain tolerance trials, the psychological profiling. Now he must survive me. I stand over his sedated body, the alpha-grade progenoids laid out on the surgical tray beside me. They gleam in the harsh light of the operating theater, organic and alien, veined with black capillaries and glistening with preservation fluid. The cervical gland is smaller, the size of a child's fist. The thoracic gland is larger, bulbous, pulsing faintly with autonomic life even in stasis. I make the first incision. The monomolecular scalpel parts flesh with surgical precision, cutting through skin and muscle to expose the cervical vertebrae. Blood wells up, thick and dark. The autosutures activate, clamping the wound edges and spraying coagulant. I peel back the tissue, exposing the base of the skull, the delicate architecture of bone and nerve. The progenoid gland must be placed precisely. Too shallow, and the body will reject it. Too deep, and it will compress the spinal cord, causing paralysis or death. I use the auger lens to map the optimal placement, overlaying the surgical site with hololithic guides. My hands move with practiced efficiency, cutting a pocket in the surrounding tissue, preparing the implantation site. I lift the cervical progenoid and lower it into the wound. The gland settles into place, nestled against the vertebrae. I secure it with bioadhesive filaments, anchoring it to the bone. The body's immune response will be immediate, white blood cells swarming the foreign tissue, attempting to destroy it. This is why the gene seed must be compatible. This is why the selection process is so ruthless. If the boy's genetic markers are wrong, his body will tear the gland apart, liquefying it, triggering a catastrophic immune cascade that will kill him within hours. I seal the incision and move to the thoracic implantation. The chest cavity is more complex. I cut through the sternum with the plasma torch, peeling back the fused ribs to expose the heart and lungs. The thoracic progenoid must be placed beneath the rib cage, in a cavity of reinforced cartilage that does not yet exist. I must create it, cutting away sections of rib, reshaping the bone structure, preparing the body for the transformation to come. The work is delicate. The work is brutal. I place the thoracic gland and seal it in place. The autosutures close the chest cavity, the ribs fusing back together with bioadhesive and bone growth stimulants. The boy's body will spend the next 6 months healing, the progenoids slowly integrating, beginning their long work of transformation. If he survives, I step back. I look down at Neophyte Tarn, his body pale and still, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. He does not know what I have done to him. He does not know the weight of the gene seed I have placed inside him, the legacy of warriors long dead, the hope of a chapter on the brink of extinction. He does not know that I have gambled his life on the purity of a dead man's flesh. I move to the next slab. Neophyte Kaler, 13 years old. High intelligence, high discipline. Approved for alpha-grade gene seed. The procedure is the same. The incisions, the implantation, the sealing, the prayer. I move to the next, and the next, and the next. 9 boys receive the gene seed. 9 futures are forged. The procedures take 14 hours. My hands do not shake. My focus does not waver. I am a space marine and I do not tire. I do not falter. But I feel the weight. I feel the knowledge that 3 boys were turned away, that their dreams of becoming Astartes died in the cold light of genetic calculus. I feel the knowledge that of the 9 I implanted, not all will survive. Statistical models predict a 60% survival rate for alpha-grade gene seed, lower for beta-grade. Of the 9 boys on these slabs, 5 or 6 will live to become battle brothers. The rest will die. And their gene seed will die with them because progenoid glands do not mature for years, and if the host dies before maturity, the glands are worthless, unformed, useless, another loss added to the chapter's toll. This is the truth of the Apothecaries' calling. We do not save lives. We harvest them. We take the dead and transform them into the living, over and over, an endless cycle of death and rebirth. We are the shepherds of the chapter's genetic future, and we are drowning in failure. I complete the final implantation. I seal the final incision. I step back and look at the 9 sedated boys, their bodies pale and fragile, their futures uncertain. The Emperor protects, I murmur. The words are ash in my mouth. 6 months later, neophyte Tarn dies. The rejection begins slowly, a fever that will not break. Muscle spasms that grow more violent with each passing day. His skin turns gray, then mottled, then black. His organs begin to fail, kidneys first, then liver, then the secondary heart that was implanted only weeks before the progenoids. The gene seed is killing him, rewriting his genetic code into something the body cannot sustain. I do everything I can. I flood his system with immunosuppressants, anti-rejection drugs, sacred unguents blessed by the chapter's chaplains. I recite the litany of healing over his convulsing body. I monitor every vital sign, adjust every variable, search desperately for a solution. Nothing works. He dies in the surgical theater, his body arching off the slab, his eyes wide and unseeing, his mouth open in a silent scream. The heart monitor flatlines. The autosutures disengage. The servoskulls murmur their funeral dirges. I stand over his corpse and feel nothing. No grief, no anger, no regret. Only the cold, mechanical realization that I must harvest the gene seed before it spoils. I activate the reductor. I cut through the base of his neck, exposing the cervical progenoid. The gland is small, immature, only 6 months into its development. It is useless. I remove it anyway, seal it in a stasis vault marked with crimson quarantine sigils. The genitor adepts will study it, analyze what went wrong, add the data to the chapter's archives. I move to the thoracic cavity. The second progenoid is larger, further along in its maturation, but still years away from viability. I remove it and seal it in stasis. 2 glands, both useless. The gene seed I implanted in Tarn is lost. The alpha-grade progenoids I harvested from Vorskar Prime, the pure genetic material I thought would secure the chapter's future, wasted. The boy is dead. The gene seed is dead. The chapter is 1 step closer to extinction. I report the failure to the chapter master. He listens in silence, his face impassive, carved from stone. When I finish, he nods once. The Emperor's will, he says. I do not respond. I do not trust myself to speak. Tarn is not the only loss. Of the 9 neophytes implanted 6 months ago, 3 are dead. Tarn, Drevius, Corthan. All from rejection, all from the same slow, agonizing immune cascade. The remaining 6 survive, but 2 show early signs of instability. Fevers, tremors, abnormal blood chemistry. They may still die. The transformation is not complete. It will not be complete for years. This is the calculus of gene seed implantation. For every battle brother we create, we lose gene seed to failure, rejection, death. The chapter survives not because the process is efficient, but because we recover enough progenoids from the fallen to offset the losses. But the margins are thinning. The Crimson Wardens are trapped in a death spiral. Every battle costs us gene seed. Every harvest yields fewer pure glands. Every implantation risks catastrophic failure. We are bleeding out, slowly, and there is no tourniquet that can stop it. I return to the apothecarian and open the gene vault. 347 glands, I think. No, 344. I used 18 on the last implantation cycle. I recovered 2 immature glands from failed neophytes. 328. I stare at the cryogenic alcoves, the rows of frozen progenoids, each one a fragment of the chapter's dwindling soul. How long can we last? The calculations are simple. 412 battle brothers. Average lifespan in active combat, 80 years. Average casualties per decade, 40 warriors. Average gene seed recovery rate, 50%. Average implantation success rate, 60%. Average progenoids recovered per successful battle brother, 1.8, accounting for losses in combat before full maturity. I run the numbers in my head, over and over, searching for a variable I can change, a factor I can optimize. There is none. At current rates, the Crimson Wardens will fall below sustainable strength, 200 battle brothers, within 3 centuries. At that point, we will be unable to field full companies, unable to defend our territory, unable to fulfill our oaths to the Imperium. The chapter will be declared defunct. Our gene seed will be absorbed by another chapter, our history erased, our legacy reduced to a footnote in the Administratum's endless archives. Unless something changes, unless we find a new recruiting world, unless the Adeptus Mechanicus grants us access to lost gene-forging technologies, unless the Emperor himself descends from his golden throne and blesses us with a miracle. I laugh. The sound is bitter and hollow, echoing through the empty gene vault. There will be no miracles. I close the vault and return to the surgical theater. There is always more work, always another neophyte to implant, another battle brother to treat, another corpse to harvest. The apothecarian never sleeps. The gene seed never rests, and I never stop. The chapter master summons me 3 years later. I ascend to the Hall of Blades, the Fortress Monastery's command center, where the senior officers gather to plan campaigns and debate strategy. The hall is vast, its walls lined with the battle standards of companies long extinct, its floor inlaid with marble mosaics depicting the chapter's greatest victories. At the far end, seated on a throne of black iron, is Chapter Master Calroth. Ancient, scarred, his face a ruin of burned tissue and augmetic implants. He has led the Crimson Wardens for 200 years. He has watched the chapter decline from 800 warriors to 400. He has made the same cold calculations I make, and he knows the truth. We are dying. Apothecary Kale, he says, his voice a low rasp. Report. I step forward and activate the hololithic display. The numbers appear, glowing in the dim light. Current chapter strength, 397 battle brothers. Gene seed reserves, 281 viable progenoids. Projected sustainability window, 270 years. The assembled officers murmur. Captain Theron of the 3rd Company shakes his head. Captain Voss of the 5th Company stares at the floor. They know what the numbers mean. Calroth leans forward. Your recommendations? I hesitate. I have prepared this report for years, rehearsed the words 1,000 times in my mind, but speaking them aloud, making the admission, feels like heresy. We must reduce combat deployments, I say. Every engagement costs us gene seed we cannot afford to lose. We must prioritize defense over offense, consolidation over expansion. We must petition the Adeptus Terra for access to new recruiting worlds, or gene-forging technologies, or direct genetic intervention from the Adeptus Mechanicus. Colroda's expression does not change. And if the Administratum denies our petition, then we must consider alternative sources. The hall falls silent. The officers stare at me. Captain Theron's hand drops to the hilt of his power sword. Explain, Calroth says. I activate the secondary display. A genetic sequence appears, rotating slowly, a progenoid gland but altered, its structure modified. This is a gamma-compromised progenoid, recovered from Brother Talon on Vorskar Prime. It shows severe genetic degradation, mutations in the osmodula, irregularities in the catalepsia node, trace corruption in the preomner sequences. Under standard protocols, this gland would be quarantined and eventually incinerated. I pause. The officers lean forward. But the genitor adepts believe it can be repaired. The corruption is localized. If we excise the damaged sequences and replace them with gene-forged equivalents, the gland could be rendered viable. The process is experimental. The success rate is unknown. But it would allow us to reclaim gene seed that would otherwise be lost. Colroda's eyes narrow. You are proposing we implant corrupted gene seed into our neophytes. I am proposing we attempt to repair it first, I say. The alternative is extinction. The hall erupts. Captain Voss slams his fist on the table. This is madness. Corrupted gene seed is the root of mutation, of heresy. The blood angels suffer the black rage because their gene line is flawed. The space wolves cannot create successor chapters because their canis helix is unstable. You would doom us to the same fate. We are already doomed. I say, my voice cold. The question is whether we die pure or die fighting. Captain Theron stands, his hand still on his sword. This is heresy, Apothecary. The Codex Astartes is clear. Gene seed purity is paramount. To compromise it is to betray the Emperor's vision. The Emperor's vision was a galaxy united under his rule. I snap. That vision failed. The Imperium is rotting. The chapters are dying. Purity is a luxury we can no longer afford. The hall falls silent again. Calroth stares at me, his augmetic eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. You walk a dangerous line, Apothecary, he says. But you are not wrong. Summon the genitor adepts. Begin the experimental procedures. If they succeed, we will proceed. If they fail, he does not finish the sentence. He does not need to. I bow and leave the hall. The gene-forging chamber is a place of miracles and abominations. It lies deep beneath the Apothecarian, carved into the bedrock of our world. A vast laboratory filled with arcane machinery and humming gene looms. The genitor adepts of the Adeptus Mechanicus work here, robed figures more machine than man, their flesh replaced by augmetics and their minds augmented by cogitator implants. They do not speak. They do not sleep. They simply work, endlessly, manipulating the genetic code of the Astartes with a precision that borders on the divine. I descend into the chamber, the corrupted progenoids from Vorskar Prime clutched in stasis vaults. The lead genitor adept, Muggos Velcrum, greets me with a burst of binaric cant. I do not understand the language of machines, but my armor's auto-translator converts it to Gothic. Apothecary Kale. Gene seed has been prepared. The repair protocols are ready. Success probability, 43%. 43%, I repeat. And if the procedures fail, the progenoids will be rendered permanently inviable. Genetic breakdown will accelerate. Total loss. I nod. This is the gamble. 43% chance of success. 57% chance of total loss. But if we do nothing, the gene seed is lost anyway. The corrupted progenoids will never be implanted. They will sit in the quarantine vaults, decaying slowly, until they are eventually incinerated. Proceed, I say. Muggos Velcrum gestures to the gene loom, a towering machine of brass and crystal, its surface etched with high Gothic prayers and Mechanicus incantations. The corrupted progenoids are placed in the loom's input cradle, suspended in preservation gel. The machine hums to life, its cogitator banks flickering with data streams, its manipulator arms descending to begin the delicate work of genetic surgery. I watch the procedure on hololithic displays. The progenoid's genetic code is disassembled, strand by strand, sequence by sequence. The corrupted regions are identified segments of DNA that have mutated, unraveling into chaotic patterns. The genitor adepts isolate these regions, cutting them away with molecular precision, and replace them with gene-forged substitutes, synthetic sequences crafted to match the chapter's original genetic template. The process takes 6 hours. The cogitator banks churn through calculations, modeling the interactions between original and synthetic DNA, predicting how the repaired gland will behave when implanted in a living host. The manipulator arms work tirelessly, weaving new genetic code into the progenoid structure, repairing the damage wrought by entropy and war. Finally, the gene loom falls silent. The progenoid is lifted from the cradle, its surface smooth and clean, the sickly green veins replaced by healthy black capillaries. Muggos Velcrum analyzes the result. Repair successful. Genetic integrity restored to 87%. Progenoid rated beta stable. Suitable for implantation with moderate rejection risk. I stare at the repaired gland. It looks perfect. It looks pure. But I know the truth. This is not natural gene seed, born from the body of a fallen brother. This is a hybrid, part flesh, part machine, part divine, part profane. What are the long-term risks? Ask. Unknown, Velcrum replies. The synthetic sequences are stable under laboratory conditions, but we cannot predict how they will behave in a living host over decades of transformation. Mutation risk, elevated. Rejection risk, elevated. Psychological instability risk, elevated. Elevated, I murmur. But not certain. Certainty is impossible, Apothecary. We are manipulating the Emperor's genetic legacy. The variables are infinite. I nod slowly. This is the choice. Use the repaired gene seed and risk mutation, or let the chapter die pure. I take the repaired progenoid and return to the surface. The first boy to receive repaired gene seed is named Vorek. He is 12 years old, tall and lean, with sharp features and eyes like chips of ice. He survived the trials with ruthless efficiency, killing 2 rival aspirants in single combat and enduring 48 hours of psycho-indoctrination without breaking. His genetic compatibility index is high 91%, and his psychological profile is stable. He is, by every measure, an ideal candidate. I implant the repaired gene seed on a cold morning, the surgical theater lit by flickering candles and harsh lumen strips. The procedure is the same as always. The incisions, the implantation, the sealing, but I feel the weight of it differently this time. I am not just implanting gene seed. I am implanting an experiment, a gamble, compromise. Vorek survives the surgery. His body accepts the progenoids. The transformation begins. I monitor him obsessively. Daily blood tests, weekly genetic scans, constant observation. The other apothecaries notice my anxiety, but they say nothing. They know what is at stake. 6 months pass. Vorek shows no signs of rejection. His body is changing, growing, the gene seed working its slow transformation. His bones thicken. His muscles grow dense. His secondary heart begins to beat. 1 year passes. Vorek is inducted into the scout company, given his first suit of power armor and his first combat blade. He fights alongside veteran scouts on a dozen missions, proving himself capable, disciplined, loyal. 2 years pass. The transformation accelerates. The catalepsian node activates, allowing him to function without sleep. The preomner matures, granting him resistance to poison. The hemophagia develops, allowing him to absorb gene memory through the consumption of flesh. 3 years pass. Vorek is promoted to full battle brother, his training complete. He joins the 3rd Company, serves under Captain Theron, fights in the defense of our eastern border against an orc incursion. He kills 43 greenskins in a single engagement, his bolter roaring, his blade slick with alien blood. The chapter watches him. The chaplains watch him. I watch him, and slowly the fear recedes. The repaired gene seed works. Vorek is stable. He is functional. He is a space marine, indistinguishable from those born of pure gene stock. The chapter master approves additional repairs. 4 more corrupted progenoids are sent to the gene-forging chamber. 3 are successfully repaired. 1 fails, disintegrating into genetic sludge. The 3 repaired glands are implanted in new neophytes. 2 survive the transformation. The success rate is lower than pure gene seed, but it is not 0. And in a chapter on the brink of extinction, even marginal gains are worth the risk. 5 years after Vorek's implantation, the Crimson Warden's gene seed reserves have grown. Not by much, only 30 glands, but it is growth. For the first time in a century, the decline has slowed. For the first time in living memory, there is hope. But hope is a dangerous thing. Vorek begins to change in his 7th year. The signs are subtle at first. A twitch in his left hand. A hesitation before responding to orders. A distant look in his eyes, as if he is listening to something no one else can hear. I examine him in the Apothecarian. Full genetic scan. Neurological assessment. Blood chemistry analysis. The results are anomalous. The synthetic gene sequences are degrading. Not quickly, but measurably. The repairs the genitor adepts made, the gene-forged DNA that replaced the corrupted regions, are breaking down under the stress of his body's constant transformation. The progenoid glands are still functional, still producing the organs and enzymes that sustain him, but the genetic code is drifting, mutating, becoming something other. I do not tell Vorek. I do not tell the chapter master. Not yet. I need more data. I need to understand what is happening before I condemn the entire program. But the mutations accelerate. 8 months later, Vorek's skin begins to harden, turning gray and leathery. His bones thicken further, cracking and reforming, growing denser but more brittle. His secondary heart beats irregularly, skipping beats, struggling to pump blood through a circulatory system that is slowly calcifying. I run more tests. I consult the genitor adepts. They analyze the data and deliver their verdict in cold binary cant. Prognosis: terminal genetic instability. Estimated time to catastrophic organ failure: 6 to 18 months. Recommendation: termination and gene seed recovery. I stare at the report. Termination. They are recommending I kill Vorek, cut out his progenoid glands before they degrade further, salvage what I can from the wreckage. But Vorek is not a wreckage. He is a battle brother. He has served the chapter for 7 years. He has bled for the Emperor. He has earned the right to die in battle, not on my surgical slab. I tell the chapter master the truth. I lay out the data, the genetic scans, the genitor adept's recommendation. I wait for his judgment. Kalroth listens in silence. When I finish, he steeples his fingers and stares at me with those cold augmetic eyes. How many others? He asks. 2, I say. The other neophytes implanted with repaired gene seed. They show early signs of the same degradation. And how long do they have? Unknown. Perhaps a decade. Perhaps less. Kalroth nods slowly. And Vorek? 6 to 18 months. Can you stop the degradation? No. The synthetic gene sequences are fundamentally unstable. They were designed to repair the progenoids, not to sustain a living warrior for decades. The longer Vorek lives, the more the mutations will progress. Then we have bought ourselves time, Kalroth says. 7 years of service from gene seed that would otherwise have been lost. 7 years of a warrior fighting for the Imperium. It is a fair trade. I stare at him. A fair trade? Vorek is dying. The other 2 will follow. The repaired gene seed program is a failure. It is not a failure, Kalroth says, his voice hard. It is a compromise. We are a dying chapter apothecary. We do not have the luxury of purity. We do not have the luxury of long lifespans and clean deaths. We take what we can, we fight while we can, and we accept the consequences. He stands towering over me. Vorek will continue to serve until he can no longer fight. When that day comes, you will harvest his gene seed and analyze the data. The genitor adepts will use what they learn to improve the repair protocols. And the next generation will last longer. And the generation after that will last longer still. This is how we survive apothecary. Not through miracles, but through incremental gains bought with blood and suffering. I bow my head. As you command, chapter master. Dismissed. I leave the Hall of Blades and descend into the Apothecarian. Vorek is waiting for me in the surgical theater. His armor removed, his mutated flesh exposed to the cold air. He knows. He sees the look in my eyes. How long? He asks. 6 to 18 months, I say. He nods, unsurprised. Then I will make them count. He red-ons his armor and returns to the 3rd Company. He fights in 14 more engagements over the next year. He kills orcs, heretics, traitor guardsmen. He serves with honor and courage, and he does not complain. When the end comes, it is swift. His secondary heart fails mid-battle, his body locking up as the calcified organs collapse inward. He falls in the ruins of a manufactorum, surrounded by the corpses of his enemies, a bolt pistol still clutched in his rigid hand. I recover his gene seed 3 hours later. Both progenoids are intact, though heavily mutated. I seal them in stasis and take them to the gene forging chamber. Mugos Velcrum analyzes them for 6 months. The report is dense, technical, filled with genetic nomenclature I barely understand. But the conclusion is clear. The repaired gene seed program can be improved. The synthetic sequences can be stabilized. The next generation will last longer. Not forever, but longer. I stand in the gene vault, surrounded by the chapter's dwindling reserves, and I think about Vorek. 7 years of service. 7 years bought with corrupted gene seed and forbidden experimentation. 7 years that would not have existed if I had followed the Codex Astartes. Is it enough? Is it worth it? I do not know. But I know this: the Crimson Wardens will survive. Not through purity, not through miracles, but through compromise and sacrifice. We will take the gene seed of the dead, corrupted and flawed though it may be, and we will forge new warriors from it. And those warriors will fight and die and be harvested in turn, over and over, an endless cycle of death and rebirth. This is the truth of how gene seed is harvested in Warhammer 40,000. This is the price of the Imperium's survival. This is the weight we carry every day, every battle, every harvest. And we do not falter. We do not stop, because to stop is to die. And we are not yet ready to die.